kind of cozy here in the Craidman household. So
Yeah.
hopefully
Are the Lakers
2021 will be the
playing
year.
the Mavericks?
Yeah. So my son's works part-time as a special events EMT. So he's actually there for the employees that are in the arena.
Come on up, Bo.
Good Shabbos to everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know it felt like a weekend today for some reason. It felt like a weekend, at least to me, and maybe to you as well. But it was, let me go ahead and just wish you all a good Shabbos, wish each other a good Shabbos before we have to do the, not mandatory, but we should mute just so we don't get the feedback. It's good to see you all out tonight for Shabbos. And let me go ahead and mute. And then Cantor, if you could unmute yourself when you get a chance. We start always on page 16 with Shalom Aleichem for Kabbalat Shabbat, receiving of the Sabbath. It needs to have preparation. If you want to enter into Shabbat in a way in which we can reflect on our week and reflect on what is going to be, we need to take a moment to receive it, to pause for just a moment and accept that this is our chance, this is our choice to be able to enter into Shabbat, to add a little bit to our soul, to reflect, to go inside. Of course, the Sfat Emet, who is one of the great Kabbalistic teachers or one of the great Chassids, talked about the importance of Shabbat being a time in which you go inside. Throughout the entire week, we are outside doing and living outside of our bodies on some level. We have to work, we have to till, we have to toil, we have to live our lives. But Shabbat is specifically for us to reflect inside, to reflect on what is going on within ourselves so that we can refresh, relax, and rest. We continue and we start our service on page 16 with Shalom Aleichem.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Shalom Aleichem Malchei Hasharet Malchei Elyon Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bohem l'shalom, Malchei HaShalom, Malchei Elyon. Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Barchuni l'shalom, Malchei HaShalom, Malchei Elyon. Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malchei HaShalom, Malchei Elyon. Mimelech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
As we turn to Lecha Dodi on page 38, we welcome the Sabbath in a new and different way. We come out to meet the Sabbath bride. And as you see, the energy that the cantor has brought is that motion brings emotion. If you want to feel the service, if you want to feel the importance of what is happening now, you have to get into the motion. You have to get into the singing, and in our case, sometimes the clapping and the moving. That is why many people shuckle and move around when they daven, so that they can really get a movement. I want to welcome all those who are on Facebook Live. We are in different ways trying to connect, but that is really the thread, is connecting. And one way to connect is through song and movement. So let us all sing in the unfortunate thing, and hopefully soon please God that we'll be able to be together. The unfortunate thing is that we can't hear you, but the truth is we can see the energy of those who are singing along. So please join us with Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmianu el hameuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem ultiferet v'li tila lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha uv'sachala toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We turn to page 50 for the Ma'ariv Arvim, the reminder that a great miracle is constantly happening. Everything is in its order. The sun rises on time and sets on time, and it is something that we at times assume will just happen. We just assume that everything is going to be as it was yesterday. So sometimes we need to just reflect on how much a true miracle it is that the sun rises and sets at its appointed times, that we can almost set our clocks literally to the time in which we light the Shabbat candles and we say the evening prayers. Ma'ariv Aravim.
El Chai v'kayam Tamidim loch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Ha'ma'ariv Aravim.
We turn now to page 52. With an everlasting love, you have loved the house of Israel, teaching us your Torah, its mitzvot, laws, and judgments.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amchavta Torah u'mitzvot hukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shachbeinu u'vekumeinu nasiach be'ukecha v'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'yorech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla ki hem chayenu ve'yorech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla ki hem chayenu ve'yorech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla ki hem chayenu ve'yorech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla ve'avatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam Beshivtecha bebetecha uvelechtecha baderech ushachbecha uvekumecha ukshartam leotal yadecha vehayu letotafot beinenecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha.
The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the children of Israel and bid them to make fringes in the corners of their garments throughout their generations, putting upon the fringes of each corner a thread of blue. When you look upon the fringes, you will be reminded of all the commandments of the Lord and obey them. You will not be led astray by the inclination of your heart or by the attraction of your eyes. Thus you will be reminded to fulfill all my commandments and be consecrated to your God. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God."
Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai vehitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet.
Before we enter into Vishamru on page 64, there is a wonderful prayer. Emet ve'emunah kol zot ve'kayam aleinu. True and certain is the English translation in our prayer book, but emet literally means truth, and emunah can be translated as faith. Emet can be trust, and emunah can be faith. Really, what is the difference? Oftentimes when we have these conversations, they turn into that emet and emunah, or faith and trust, that these are almost interchangeable. But I would like to say that our tradition says not necessarily so, that there is a true distinction. Emet really is, at least as I understand it, as important as a teaching from a Hasidic teacher, the Sfat Emet, who says emet, literally truth, you can learn about from the words itself. Aleph is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and Tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and Mem is the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You put those all together, and Emet means truth. In other words, you need to see the whole picture to understand truth. Not any one of us truly understands truth with a capital T. We all have a little bit of truth. We all have a little bit of the truth. That's the necessity of a community, that you need each other to understand truth, to understand each other, to understand the purpose of our life. Emunah, faith, though, is a little different. Faith isn't necessarily about trust. It is about courage. Doesn't it take courage to tell somebody the truth? Doesn't it take courage to tell somebody a little bit about themselves that they maybe can't see? That you need to tell the whole story that is the person that you are experiencing? That takes true courage. As we enter into the end of this year, I ask that each and every one of us finds a little bit of courage in ourselves to tell and be truthful to somebody else. Not calling them out, but being truthful about yourself. Who are you? What are your aspirations? What are your memories? What do you imagine the coming year to be? It is through those actions that we can truly enter into a 2021, because remember that we will not come together until we are already in 2021 as another Sabbath, that this is the week that we come together to truly enter into a new year of trust and truth and courage. And in that way, we can begin to really change time. We do continue with Vishamru, which can be found on page 64. And so we rise and we enter into formally a beautiful Sabbath, the beginning of the Kiddush. We sing together.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat La'asod et HaShabbat Ledorotam berit olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat La'asod et HaShabbat Ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam, oti leolam, oti leolam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, la'asod et HaShabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, Asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz veshamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat la'asod et hashabat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asod et HaShabbat ledorotam berit olam.
We turn to page 68 as the cantor helps us in a meditation as we prepare for the Ma'ariv Amida for the Sabbath. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. O Lord, open our lips that our mouths may declare your praises.
Adonai. Ananana svatai tivta. Ananana ufi agid. Ufi agid tehilatecha.
We thankfully acknowledge you, O God and God of our ancestors, Lord of eternity. You're the source of our strength, even as you have been Israel's protecting shield in every generation. We thank you and proclaim your praises for our lives, which are in your hands, for our souls, which are in your care, for your miracles, which are daily with us, and for your wondrous kindness at all times. Morning, noon, and night, source of all goodness, your mercies never fail, source of compassion, your kindness never ceases. You are our hope.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael. B'chol et u'b'chol sha'a b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam, tasim leolam.
Shikoch to you, Cantor. We now take a moment and please place the names of those who are in need of healing, whether spiritually, physically, or mentally, as we offer a Misha Berach, a Refuat Nefesh, a Refuat Guf, a refuah shlema, a healing of body, a healing of spirit, a complete healing for all those who are in need.
Misha berach avotenu Avraham, Yitzhak, veYaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech v'rapeh et haholim. El na'rafan El na'rafan Allah, El na'rafan Allah, El na'rafan Allah, Mishavera Avotenu, Abraham, Yitzhak, veYaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech v'rapeh et haholim.
This week's Torah portion, Vayigash, is the great reveal. If we remember in the story, Joseph's brothers sell him off to what will later become slavery in Egypt. And through a series of fortunate or unfortunate events, depending on how you read the story, Joseph rises to the second most prominent position in Egypt, only second to Pharaoh. What ends up happening is the brothers and father, Jacob, are hungry because of a great drought that Joseph predicted, which allowed him to become to such a powerful position. And the family of Joseph comes in need to Joseph, and they don't recognize Joseph. And in this week's portion, there is the great reveal. But at that great reveal, something very, very telling happens. Joseph was no longer able to hold back, meaning that they didn't recognize him, and he was in his heart bursting forth with the desire to tell his brothers, it's me, it is Joseph, who you sold so many years before. Joseph was no longer able to hold back. He wanted to let them know that he was alive. Please tell Father, you can hear him saying in his heart. And then it is slowly understood by the brothers that this is their brother Joseph. They can't believe it. He either looks different, or maybe he had changed physically or spiritually, whatever the case may be, but they couldn't recognize him. And then there is a wonderful, wonderful phrase, a wonderful pasuk, a couple of words in the Torah that say, Judah approached him. Judah approached Joseph. And of course, we understand that to be a time in which something miraculous happens, that there is a reconciliation. That doesn't mean everything is gone, isn't that right? You can't just wash away years of experience and memory, but that there was a moment. Joseph couldn't hold back, and Judah reached forward. I'm reminded of Martin Buber, who comes up, if you're interested in reading with a wonderful thought, the idea of I, thou. And I'll shorten in many ways the idea of the I, thou, but we are all in relationships. Is that not true? We are constantly in relationships with other human beings. When we talk about relationships, the ones that are in our lives, we have relationships with other people that we go throughout the day that maybe there isn't really a connection. The oftentimes example is when you go to the bank and you have to exchange money or get money. I don't know if people even do that anymore, but at least we're here now that people do have an experience when you go to the bank, or you have had an experience when you go to the bank. You're not going to tell the bank teller all your deepest sorrows and woes and exciting news. There is a transaction. That is the I, it. But the most important relationships we have is the I, thou, as you understand, where I can actually see, thou being the older language, I can actually see you, that there is a interaction. Many of us have had those relationships where we actually are able to connect with somebody. And when you are able to truly connect with someone, isn't there something electric happening? When you have connected with another person in a deep and profound way, is there not something happening between you two? If you haven't had a chance to have that relationship, it is arguably the most important relationships. And that is what life is truly about, is the relationships that we develop. When Joseph is ready to leap forward and his brother extends his hand, that is where God is. The entire story of Joseph, God is not in the story. Why? We learn from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they had a relationship with God, and God spoke to all of our forefathers, but God did not speak to Joseph, and God was not in any of this story. For the past several weeks that we've been studying the Torah portion, God is not present, other than in the ways that we understand it, between two human beings. When we enter into this new year, it is imperative for us to understand the importance of the interactions that happen between two human beings. If we do not hold and elevate the relationships between each other, then how are we supposed to bring God into this world? Spend this week, this final week of 2020, and we all know it's been a crazy year. We all know it's been a difficult year. That's true. If you watch the news, though, many of them, as they end the year, they want to talk about the positive. They want to talk about what is the silver lining of this year. I think we could do well to spend a moment, not just thinking about the silver lining, not just thinking about what went wrong in this past year. There are many things, but we should often take time throughout this week looking at what are the relationships that help build us up and helped us throughout this entire 2020, and that we strengthen those relationships so that 2021 will be all that much more sweet and pleasant. That is truly where we will find God. We find God in our relationships. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Aleinu, which can be found on page 118.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei melech malchei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim ve'osed haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim ha'al u'shchinatu zo begavhei meromim hu Eloheinu ein od Emet malkeinu efes ulato ככתוב בתורתו, ויראת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד. Ain't no dog in the thunder. You can't do that. I can hear you. Stop.
For sovereignty is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory. As it is written in your Torah, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. And it has been foretold, the Lord shall be sovereign over all the earth. On that day, the Lord shall be one and shall be acclaimed as one.
ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please forgive me for a moment. I need to say a brief prayer for the consoling of the mourners. I did not see Linda Leskin as she entered into our Zoom service, who is in the Shiva for her beloved Marty Leskin. So we have to offer our Hamakom Yenachem Echem B'toch Sha'arei Avlei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May the Holy One who comforts Israel grant you solace in your bereavement as she enters into the ceasing of mourning practices during Shabbat. She is still in Shiva with her family. May the memories which we cherish and lovingly now recall inspire us so to live that we may too bequeath a heritage of precious memories to those whom we shall leave behind. In tribute to our departed, may we enrich the lives we touch, and may we share and preserve the faith with which our mourners will now affirm as they rise to sanctify God's name in the hallowed words of the Kaddish, which can be found on page 124. In this week's yard sites, Kevin Harrison Breibart, cousin of Jennifer Schuper; Mary Pincus, mother of Harriet Flancer; Samuel Ben, father of Rena Levy; Edna Charo, mother of Mark Charo; Isaac Levine, father-in-law of Irene Levine; Howard Levy, father of Phil Levy; Edith Neft, mother of Bruce Neft; Betty Lou Bannerman Roth, friend of Lori Rimlin Bond; Charles Block, father of Brian Block; Jerry Greenfield, father of Sherry Craigman; Richard Raphael, husband of Debbie Gabriel; Marlene Greenfield, mother of Sherry Kreidman; Jack Levine, father-in-law of Patricia Levine. Again, the mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 124. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechul beit Yisrael, bagala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbam barach le'olam u'me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Aseh shalom ben Ramav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God, who makes harmony in the heavens, grant us harmony and peace here for us, for all Israel and all humankind, and let us all say amen. So I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. We turn now to the Kiddush on page 90. As we rise, as we enter into this Sabbath, we take a moment to remember and reflect on the wonderful memories of this past year, the good positive memories of this past year. There's enough to worry about, isn't it the case? There's plenty to worry and be concerned about, but how we remember will also color how we imagine. And so let us remember and think of the memories of the beauty so that we can imagine a better 2021. We rise for Kiddush, and we take in our right hand the Kiddush cup, whether grape juice or wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'avav ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh b'reishit ki hu yom techila lamikra'e kodesh zechel etziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabat kodshecha v'ahava u'bratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. L'chaim, to a wonderful, wonderful Sabbath. Shabbat shalom lekulam. Let me unmute you all so you have a chance, or unmute yourself as I'm trying to figure out how to do that so we can all wish each other a good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.